Marie Unger, welcome to the conversation today.
Well, hello, John. Thank you for having me.
It is a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from Tampa, although you usually reside in the Denver area, and I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. Today, we're going to be exploring the connection between employee development and culture. This is something I'm very passionate about. I spend way too much of my time thinking about culture and empowering employees and how to develop employees. And so I'm super excited to pick your brain and explore this topic with you today. As we get started, I wanted to share Marie's bio with everybody. Marie Unger serves as Chief Executive Officer of Emergetics International, an organizational development company dedicated to realizing the potential of people within businesses, educational environments, and the community. Since joining Emergetics, Marie has consulted with thousands of business leaders, employees, and educators around the world, where she helps them apply the theories and the benefits of cognitive diversity to create positive, productive workplace cultures. An expert in the way people prefer to think and behave, she empowers organizations to optimize communication, increase cohesion, improve team performance, and amplify employee engagement. Now, I could go on, but is there anything else you would like to highlight by way of your background, personal context before we dive on into the conversation?
Yeah, sure. Obviously culture is important if you, as you just read that bio, but I think the thing that is exciting for me to share about culture is that I actually started my career as 23 years in public education.
Mhm.
Was a teacher, was a school principal. And, obviously when you are in a leadership role as a school principal, I had, the opportunity to really think differently about my team and how our teachers collaborated ultimately for the best benefit for kids. And so culture was not just, it's not just a thing for me. I guess it's something that I lived and practice and continue to live and practice every single day. And it went beyond our school culture. It was classroom cultures. It was our community culture. So there's so
Yeah.
many, broad capacity of what culture is and can bring, to the table for ultimate success. I think that that's why I'm very excited to join you today, John.
Yeah. Well, and that's really interesting. Your background in the public school system, it highlights that culture exists anytime you get people together.
Yep.
So it doesn't,
Anytime, whether they're little people or big people.
yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter if you're talking about a friend group or if you're talking about a classroom of children, a home, a workplace, a team, whatever, right? So anytime you get people together, the culture will emerge.
Mhm.
So the question is, do you want it to be an intentional culture, a healthy culture, a productive, high performing culture, or do you want it to be whatever just happens to emerge? And usually, what just happens to emerge isn't particularly helpful. It's often unhealthy and often toxic. So,
Yep.
we want to be able to shape it in a
Yep.
way that will be productive, that will give it the best chance for people to be empowered, for people to have the best chance for success, right? And that takes
Absolutely.
effort
Yep.
because let's be honest, we're human animals. Like we all, humanity is amazing, but it's messy. And we all are just messy human animals. And that means it's hard. We're tribal, which brings with it a lot of positive things, but a lot of hard things. And so we just got to work at it. And I was actually reading an article. This was a few years ago, but I was reading an article where the author was making the argument. He was basically saying, "Why are we chasing our tails around culture?" He's like basically making the argument, we're just wasting our time. Culture, all this conversation around culture, is stupid. Let's just focus on performance. Let's just focus on output.
Mhm.
Um, and basically almost even arguing that culture doesn't even exist. It's kind of like a myth. Like let's
Mhm.
just focus on output. And I'm just looking at, maybe it's because I'm a PhD trained sociologist. So maybe that's part of it. I'm like, what?
Yeah, exactly.
Like what
Things
are you
like social
talking about?
neuroscience, we all have that sense of belonging that we crave. And, yeah, that would not sit well with a lot of us that are so intentional about culture, and honestly connecting that intentionality of culture to business outcomes, because it's business outcomes are affected. We know that. I mean, research says that employees that are engaged are 2.5 more times more likely to contribute to revenue than those that are disengaged. And so, if you look at your business outcomes, and recognize that if you have an employee-centric approach to your business, therefore engaged employees, more productive employees, you have other metrics to measure your success by. You can have retention metrics to measure your success by, and we know the expense of recruitment and what that means if you have a high turnover situation. So you have the retention, productivity, engagement, sense of belonging, all of that
Yeah.
contributes significantly to a positive culture.
Yeah. So the business case is clear, I think, but also just the human case behind it. Like, can we agree that we just would prefer to have a workplace that's pleasant, like where
Yeah.
people actually would enjoy being with each other, and like waking up in the morning and saying, hey, I actually am excited to go to work today, and being with so and so, and etc. Isn't that preferable over like dreading going and being in part of the grind and being chewed up by work and spit out?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Sure.
that's kind of the alternative, right?
Yeah.
So, I think on both sides, it just makes complete sense that this is something we can be super intentional about, and it's beneficial, like to human beings, for us as people, um, and I believe it's kind of really an ethical and moral choice. Like I
Yeah.
believe that strongly about it.
Yep.
So there's that case, but from the business case, as you just described, there's so many reasons. There's so much research behind this, why it is important to focus on culture, that for any organization to not spend the time, the resources, the energy behind it is really, really to their detriment. All right.
It's
So,
funny.
oh, go ahead.
Sorry, do you mind if yeah, it's funny you say that, because as you spoke, I just had a flashback when I was a school principal. I talked about the fact that kids need to want to come to school, because so often they have a love for school and then it disappears. And
Yeah.
therefore we need to make school fun. We need to make school a happy place, to what you're saying. And I literally carry that mantra with me today. And when I go and speak to all sorts of executives and leaders, around the world, I talk about the fact that happy places are productive places. And as humans, we just have an innate interest in allowing ourselves to feel joy, right?
Mhm.
And when we have that opportunity, that's all, but it has to be intentional. It's just what you started off with. You can't, it's, as you said, culture is going to develop regardless, and you have an opportunity, especially as leaders, an opportunity to influence what does that time spent at work, what does that time spent at work feel like, look like, sound like, and how can we help our employees be their best selves?
Yeah, yeah, and hopefully it's on the positive side. And that's not to
Mhm.
say that, everyone has parts of their job that maybe they don't love as much, or maybe it's a little bit more tedious, or, everyone has that, like I'm a professor. I'll be honest, I don't love grading papers. That's not my favorite thing. There's so many other things I love about my job that I just think are awesome. I love mentoring students. I love providing feedback to students and
Mhm.
mentoring and coaching students. I don't love
Mhm.
grading papers. But guess
Mhm.
what? It's part of the deal. Like I got to grade papers.
Yeah.
So I suck it up and I grade papers. Everyone has that. Everyone has something like that they have to do in part of their job. So we're not talking about like saying you can't have those things, but we're
Oh, of course.
saying but overall, you can design work, you can shape work, you can shape the environment in such a way that people can feel energized by what they're doing, and how they show up to work, and how they be with each other at work. And that's what's exciting, and that's what's exciting to me, when I think about how I engage with organizations. I want to help them be better so they can be better for their employees, and then there's all these ripple effects. Like, think about all the lives that you're changing, all the people that you're making their lives better, their families' lives better. That's I mean, that's something, that's just something that makes me excited.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, you use the word energy, and I have to tell you, we talk about energy a lot in the work that we do, that there are different components of who we are and how we work and how we learn that provides energy to us. Something that may give me energy is not something that may give my colleague energy. And
Yeah.
so understanding that, but I think if you can, it's not just about understanding it, it's about having um, just empathetic leadership, I think is something that I really often focus on. And that is that ability to perspective take, to understand where you might be coming from, and just employees feeling understood, feeling heard, feeling that their voice matters or their opinion is valued. I think that that perspective taking and understanding is something that can definitely promote a positive culture. Again, knowing that we're all different humans, and appreciating those differences as opposed to maybe criticizing or being, negative about the different approaches people take in the way that they choose to work.
Yeah, awesome. Well, we've already started to touch on it, but really where I want to go next is connecting this employee development piece, this employee
Mm.
empowerment piece to the culture. So tell us a little bit more. You can connect this back to your company too, but like what can we do in connecting employee development intentionally to
Yeah,
positive culture?
yeah. Let me talk kind of if you don't mind, I'd like to go big picture and then kind of maybe
Yeah.
drill down a little bit to some more concrete specifics. But from a big picture place, if you think about where we're all headed, there's this thing, right, called AI that everybody's talking about, and what is that going to do to our jobs? And we know that McKinsey is saying that by 2030, about 30% of tasks are going to be replaced by AI. But they're also saying that something like 20 to 30 million new jobs will be
Mhm.
created, which is the upside to all of the conversation around AI. And what it's going to take, though, is going to take and I, of course, knowing my history, am passionate about this, a learning organization. It's going to take an organization that invests in their employees to upskill, reskill them in ways that are potentially different than what they might be doing now. So some of those, obviously there's technical skills that we're going to have to upskill and reskill on, but there's soft skills. It's complex problem solving. It's navigating, tumultuous environments that may have peaks and valleys regularly as opposed to consistency. It's knowing how to communicate, collaborate, self-advocate, all the things that
Yeah.
we say are so important in more of those soft skill spaces. And so to the point of our work, that's what we teach. We talk about first, how do you get energy in general with how you prefer to work, learn, et cetera, communicate, but then how can you navigate that information in ways that help you problem solve, collaborate, work with your colleagues, your teams more effectively. And when people understand that, we see a tremendous increase in engagement and retention, et cetera, because employees are feeling like they can be their authentic selves, I guess, and when they're at work, and then build those productive relationships with their colleagues and fellow employees. So I think the concept of investing in your employees is more important than ever, especially with the changing environment that we're facing in this digital age. And the other thing, and see, I get really passionate about this too, John. And the fact that we have 5 generations in the workforce right now,
Right.
and recognizing the value that each generation brings to the table. But honestly, organizations aren't prepared to address all those generations. And so I think, as leaders, taking time to understand your generational workforce, whether you have, all the way from the baby boomers to the Gen Zs and soon to come Gen Alphas, they won't have known a world without AI. So all those expectations are very different. But as leaders, if we understand that and value it and what the contributions from each generation can bring to the table, we'll have a lot more success as an organization. We'll be much more agile and able to navigate all the changes that come our way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about the learning organization and developing a learning culture. And I really want to highlight that because a lot of times when we talk about employee development, people immediately go to, oh, you have this training program or you have, whatever, right? And yes, sometimes you have like a formal training or development program, or you have weekend retreats and excursions and where you do team building and blah blah blah, right? Those things are all part of learning and development, and that might be part of your overall strategy and what you're trying to do. But when you're talking about an overall learning culture and a development culture, it includes everything, and
Yes.
it's more holistic and it's continuous. And
Yes.
so it goes far beyond, getting people signed up to go to this workshop or to go to this training program, or to get signed up to work with a mentor or whatever. Like, it's literally embedding learning into the DNA of the company,
Mhm.
into the
Mhm.
culture, and into kind of the expectations of every employee. Like, everyone just understands, like, a big part of my job is that I just need to continually be learning, growing, upskilling, because what I was hired to do, most likely, my job description on day one probably is not going to be looking the same 6 months
Right.
from now, a year from now. Like, I need to be agile, just like, the CEO and the C-suite, they have to be agile with our strategy. My team lead needs to be agile with how we're approaching our work. I need to be agile in terms of my development. And a learning organization is agile enough and promotes learning enough that everyone is constantly going through that. Like, everyone is constantly moving forward. And
Yeah.
that's different than, I think, what the kind of the old school mentality of, oh, let's have this training program. And again, there's nothing wrong with like traditional training programs. I'm just saying that's maybe one piece of a more holistic kind of framework around
Yeah.
maybe the learning organization.
Yeah, for sure. I think in the past, it was about checking the box. It was, okay, I took that course. Okay, I took that course. And to your point, obviously there's skills and things we have to cover for our employees that are necessary. And therefore, we need to make sure that we're providing the opportunities for them to learn the necessary things. But I would say just as necessary is the ongoing nature of the culture that is a learning culture. It's a mindset. And we know mindset is everything. And when you think about a learning culture, my personal belief is it should be part of your norms. It should be part of your values. It should be something that is promoted and honestly expected from the leaders. It's leaders embedding into every employee conversation that they're having, maybe in their one-on-ones or when
Right.
they're involved in mentoring. It's, tell me what you learned. Tell me what you learned this week. What was something that you tried that you learned from, so that you're also promoting an opportunity for people to learn and not be afraid that sometimes when I tried new things, maybe it wasn't as successful. So they can start to take, bite sizes towards that philosophy. And I think, a lot of times, especially for newer hires, they come in and have this desire to just be perfect, to get it right, to, you know, be a superstar that knocks, it out of the park, and have a perception that being perfect is that I don't make mistakes, I do the job perfect. And what I would say is, if we have a learning mindset, it almost flips the narrative,
Yeah.
and says, we're going to learn and grow, and we're going to grow alongside each other. We're going to help you learn and grow in a way that maybe you have a passion for, that shows your employees you're invested in them, that you care. And who wouldn't want to go to work at a place where they feel that that their overall holistic well-being is being considered? And so it has just multiple benefits. It's not just a benefit for the organization, it's a benefit for the employees as well.
Yeah, so people are growing. It's developing the more positive culture that we were talking about earlier, and it produces better outcomes for the organization. You produce better stuff, so you're bringing more value to the market. You're being
Mhm.
more profitable. Like, check, check, check. It's a positive for everybody. Um, And you said something that I think is just really important, and it comes. I don't think you said the specific phrase or the term, but it comes back to psychological safety. Like
Mm,
you have to make sure that you create a space where there's psychological safety for people to be able to try things and quote unquote fail. And it's not really failure if you're learning from it. Fall forward, fail fast, pick yourself up, learn from it, and move on, right? Like that's just learning. That's like what kids do in school, and
mhm,
we applaud it, right? So
mhm.
it's called, like, in the sciences, it's experimentation. You try
Yep,
something, you figure out what didn't work, you adjust it, you try again.
yep,
You hypothesize. It's the scientific method, right? Like apply that in the workplace. We don't want to like waste millions of dollars trying something that didn't work, but
right.
you can think about it from a design thinking standpoint, for example.
Yeah,
Like you can iterate rapidly and
yep,
you can do it inexpensively.
yep,
And if you do that in a safe environment where people can realize, hey, I can really do this, and people are going to applaud me for the effort, I can learn much more rapidly because of the experimental mindset that I have, because I'm willing to ask questions, and because I feel safe to do so.
yeah.
That is a really dynamic kind of learning environment.
Yeah, agile methodologies in general, right? Like
Yeah.
to have an approach that supports that. But another thing that I think is important to reiterate is that agility, that learning can be both in what I would call the organizational outcomes, or maybe it's their products and services, right? That you're building or delivering. But you can have that same agile approach to how we collaborate, communicate, and work with others. So if I'm a learner, I can grow by learning how you might prefer to work with me more effectively, and
Mhm.
and what we call in our organization flexing. I can learn how to flex towards helping you and I be more effective in our approaches together, so that I'm not always set in my certain style. I'm learning how to work with other people. And so part of the learning is not just it's the soft skills. It's not just the technical skills that we want the growth to come from. I think it's also about growth in the other essential skills that are a part of work.
Yeah, yeah. Well, Marie, this has just been a fascinating conversation. I think we could go on for forever,
We
but I
could.
also note the time, and I know you have to get on with your busy day. So I'm going to let you go here in just a minute. But before we wrap things up, I wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, your team, and then give us a final word on the topic for today.
Yeah, great. Well, first of all, thank you, John. It's been a pleasure. And you're right. I could talk about, well, I get to. That's the joy of my job. I get to talk about culture all day, every day. So the way you can connect with us, it's the company is called Emerge Genetics. It's two words, emerge and genetics, but put together in one. So just one big long word, emergenetics.com. Obviously, visit us, connect with one of us on our website, or honestly, personally, through LinkedIn. I really appreciate getting to connect with others that are passionate about this same topic, and then seeing some of the great things. So on LinkedIn, just Marie Unger on LinkedIn is probably the best way to do that. And as kind of a final topic, John, or a final statement on the topic, prioritizing culture. So there's competing priorities all the time at work. We have to compete with, the priority of bringing in a revenue, getting a product out the door, whatever it might be. But if you put culture at the top priority, if you put your employees at the very highest priority that you have, I call it a people first ecosystem.
Yeah.
If you have a people first ecosystem, then those other things, those other priorities tend to take care of themselves in different ways. You still have to have a focus on them, but if your priority is people, if your priority is culture, the rest kind of takes care of itself. So.
I completely agree. Well said. Thank you so much. This
All
has just
right.
been
Thank you,
a
John.
real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out, get connected, find out more about what Marie and her team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week.